We've come out to Ngarkat this weekend to investigate the possibility that there might be thylas out in this area. There's a lot of history of sightings in and around this area over the years, many in the 60s and 70s, lesser through the latter years, but we did have a sighting about 120 k's northeast of here 2 years ago, and that was a mother with a young, they said. So there's been a bit of activity in this area historically. There was a lot of wild dogs in this area at one stage as well. But we've come out here this weekend to do the border track, which is a famous four-wheel drive kind of bash, I suppose, in South Australia. And we've come out here doing our research, having a look around, having a good camp, seeing a part of South Australia we haven't seen before, getting a bit of an idea about the terrain and the habitat, the types of prey that are out here, if there are predators in the area. Well, these are real classic fox prints, so they've got that doggy kind of shape. You get virtually no claw impression. There's a tiny bit there and there and there, but you don't get that scrape through like you do when you get the big prints. Haven't seen any signs of wombats, which is a bit unusual to expect to see wombats out here in this sort of country. But plenty of roos, foxes, emus. There's probably pygmy possums in some areas as well. There's a plethora of Banksias out here. I've never seen so many Banksias in South Australia anywhere. We've also seen some really large flocks of black yellowtail cockatoos, which was just stunning yesterday and today, and they flew right over our camp yesterday afternoon. So it's a pretty diverse area still. There would have been a lot of smaller macropods. There would be a pretty high reptile population out here you'd expect. Probably a high feral cat concentration too. Interestingly enough, we camped on the first night up the top of the park, and we went for a bit of a walk, and we found a really large scat that had a few seeds in it, but it didn't look like an emu scat at all. It was more like a large predator scat. It was too old to have any kind of mitochondrial DNA in it. There probably would have been a few hairs in there, but we couldn't see much, so it was a bit confusing at first. We kept an eye on the prints that we were seeing in the sand on the dunes when we were driving through Ngarkat, and we found some quite large canid type prints, but they were a bit old to determine exactly what they were, but they had a nice gentle arc to the toes. But they were up the middle of the track, and there was only about 2 meters of them, and they would have been at least a week or two old, I'd say. They looked pretty hammered by the weather. We did find considerable amounts of fox tracks. We never saw a fox, and we never found a fox scat. And then on the border track, we found a rather large print that is quite reminiscent of thylacoleo. And there are sightings of large tiger cat type animals in the Victorian side of this country, in the big desert wilderness area back in the 60s. So yeah, that was a really interesting print, and you can see by looking at it that there is that large opposable thumb type digit situated to the bottom left hand side, and then there's some really substantial claw drag at the top, and they're my hands next to the actual print, and it's way bigger than my hands. It was just bizarre. We couldn't find any other prints there, and it really blew us away that the absolute size of it was huge. There is definitely enough game here to support a predator, and with the sightings of big cats and thylacines historically and in more recent times in areas adjacent to this is prime country. There's plenty of low cover for a predator. There's a few nice clearings in between some of these dunes for grazing animals to congregate for predators to come out and have a crack at them. It's a really rare and beautiful thing to be able to come out into a biodiverse hotspot like this and just see nothing but wilderness around you, and have a little bit of hope that there's more than just kangaroos and emus running around out there, and there may just be those larger predators still in the area. We're going to keep this up our sleeve for another great spot to come and visit and do our research and investigate some of the sightings in this area.